Welcome to this podcast for Wednesday in the Holy Week series, All Shall Be Well. We follow the journey of Jesus through his passion, his death and resurrection, drawing upon the writings of 14th century mystic Julian of Norwich. In this part of Holy Week, we are looking at prayer. Yesterday we saw how Julian came to see God as the ground and source of our praying. Today we look at how she portrays prayer as dialogue, a dialogue that from her point of view involves asking questions, whether it's asking God for graces like mercy or forgiveness or courage, or asking questions like why is sin and suffering necessary? Or how can the Church teach one thing when she finds in God another? But she also shows how she listens to God. Having asked, she waits, and for some questions, waits a long time. Holy Week confronts us with these same questions as we see the plotting of religious authorities to find a way of dealing with Jesus once and for all. Jesus' passion brings into sharp relief the worst attributes of human nature as betrayal, denial, abuse, and injustice are worked out on his vulnerable humanity by powers both religious and civil. How do we bring this to prayer? Questioning God and listening to God. We have already seen on Palm Sunday how Julian asks God for gifts for herself. She asked God for 3 gifts, and it was effectively these prayers of hers that led her to receive her revelations. The first gift Julian asks for is to enable her to know Christ's passion, to be deeply present to his suffering. And this is perhaps the most important grace to seek for our journey through Holy Week. This asking may feel difficult, even self-centered. It isn't simple. It's deeply committing to ask for this. But it's not self-centered either. The center of this asking is Christ, Christ's passion. Julian shows a great freedom to come to God, as she puts it, come naked, openly, familiarly to God, and to ask, God of your goodness, give me yourself, for you are enough for me. Only in you do I have everything. Where Julian asks for herself, she asks to receive God's mercy and grace, recognizing it is impossible that we should seek mercy and grace and not receive them. Again, we may find it uncomfortable to ask God for ourselves, thinking this may be selfish or self-centered. But Julian understands it like this. Seeking and asking is a true, joyful, and enduring soul quality, a part of who we are as human beings, a quality that unites us and fastens us tight to the divine will at work in creation, by the sweet internal workings of the Holy Spirit. There's something really positive in this asking for her. And it may be that the real source of our discomfort in asking at this level may be about us making ourselves vulnerable to God. But Julian also asks God for understanding, for insight. When she had the image of the little thing the size of a hazelnut, she immediately asks, "How can this be?" But later on she asks a much bigger question. Why is suffering necessary? And part of the answer that she receives is, "All shall be well." But Julian's mind isn't easily put to rest by these words, even though they come from God. She asks in response, "How can all be well when our separation from you has damaged creation so terribly?" I was hoping Christ would explain all this to me more openly and clearly, so that my sense of worry and sorrow would be eased. And when Julian looks at the church and the world, she has more questions about how all can be well. The church, she says to God, teaches that all these shall be eternally condemned to hell. So how can it be possible that everything will be well? The revelation Jesus showed me seemed to contradict what I had always been taught. Our questions about the church and its teaching may not be the same as Julian's, but her question encourages us to acknowledge where we find tensions with the church and its teaching. These questions don't go away for Julian. Later she asks, "Good protector, I see you are the essence of truth, and I know that this is reality. We woefully fail you every day. We are guilty. I cannot escape the essence of who you are, and yet I cannot see that you blame us in any way. How can this be? For I knew from the church's teaching and from my own sense of what is real that sin's guilt hangs over humanity continually, from the first human beings all the way through history until the day we are raised up into heaven. I could not understand how our protector God looks at us as though we were as clean and holy as the angels in heaven. I tried to comprehend this paradox, these two realities that are such polar opposites. But no matter how much I pondered, I could find no resolution. So we see Julian as a prayer, directly asking, how? Why? But clearly asking is not the whole of the matter, for her writings are infused not just with the questions, but with the sense that she listens for response. And in reality, her writings are more about the responses that she receives than the questions she has been asking. The insights she gets from the hazelnut, reminder of God as creator, protector, nurturer. But for Julian, sometimes the response from God is a long time in the coming. She writes in chapter 86. Finally, more than 15 years later, I was given this spiritual message. Do you really want to see the Protector's meaning in these revelations? Well then, learn it well. Love was God's meaning. More than 15 years. That's a lot of patient listening and waiting for a response. So for your own reflections today on Julian and this asking and listening, I offer you 3 points. Firstly, to ask like Julian, God of your goodness, give me yourself, for you are enough for me. In doing so, notice how easy you are with asking God for yourself. And if it's too difficult, it may be helpful to ask the Holy Spirit's help to ask God for God's self. And secondly, as we journey on in Holy Week, ask like Julian, or continue asking God for the ability to face the Passion as fully as you can. And thirdly, to reflect on the big questions of life, of church, of God. What is it you would want to ask, even challenge God on? Acknowledge the questions for yourself, and then bring them to God, asking directly. You may, of course, need to ask more than once. After all, Jesus does encourage being persistent in prayer. And like Julian, you may also need to wait before receiving your response. In our Maundy Thursday podcast, we look at one further aspect of prayer with Julian, when nothing seems to be happening, and how this connects with Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane.